Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience. We are here for episode 126.
We made it.
We did.
It's a hot one out today.
It is a hot one, but it's every day because we're in June.
Yep.
So why are you even
Well, it's not August yet. It felt like August
See,
to me
these
today.
present sufferings will not be worth mentioning
Okay.
when we
When
make it to October.
August, we get to August, August will be so much hotter. We'll
I was
go.
just
I just want to
talking-
say I think you have gotten the tone of that verse wrong. Because the present sufferings won't be worth mentioning because what's coming is worse.
Well,
It's so much worse.
I was talking about what I was talking about.
So you just reminded me of, I had a conversation just last week. I met someone who has moved here to our area from Chicago. They've never lived here before, and they were talking about how hot it was.
I also had a conversation with somebody from a different part of the country.
Okay, so I talked to this girl, and she was like, "It's really hot," and I said, "Oh," and we hadn't barely gotten into June at that point, and I'm like, "Oh, you've not been through August yet,"
Yeah.
and she was like, "It gets worse,"
Well,
and I'm like, "Yeah."
Sawyer, who is our current resident, is from Missouri, and we had a conversation about, it gets hot in Missouri. And he goes, "Oh, I'm used to 98, 99, 100-degree weather." I said, "The difference is you have never done," I said, "Georgia summers are that level of heat while you're swimming through an ocean
With a blanket on.
while the pollen count is at 120.
Still dumping pollen in there. The air, you can see it as it's going in your lungs, and you're like, "Oh, this
And
is
it's
not going to
wet.
be good."
It's wet
wet.
pollen coming into your throat.
Yeah.
I said, "You've never experienced a Georgia summer."
We're in a wet blanket.
What we need to do with Sawyer is drive him below the gnat line one day this summer.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
And he would be in the
We
heat.
should take him down to Providence Canyon and make him walk it.
There you
in the
go.
humidity while he's going.
I did that one year, actually. I went in
Oh.
the summertime and walked Providence Canyon with my family and about died.
Yeah.
So
Of course, for those of you who know Sawyer, you'll know very well. He'd be very excited about that
He
by the
would.
time it was done. He's very positive. Every single time, rock on. By the end of it, he'd be very excited.
okay.
So.
I didn't even do the intro.
Just so
I'm supposed
you
to
all
do the
know,
intro.
I am not walking any canyon with
course
Sawyer
you're
or
not.
anyone else.
Of course, you're walking with nobody. You're
He
He
walking
climbs.
with anybody.
He's a mountain climber. He does all that kind of stuff. He'd be so excited.
I'm not doing any of that.
All right. So let me do the intro because we said we'd do the intro every time.
Okay. Well, go ahead and do it.
My name's Jason. This is Ed. This is Nathan. We're the teaching team at Community Christian Church.
And start right now.
And we're doing this podcast to help you think more like Jesus as we answer your questions. Today, as I teased in our last episode, we're doing something we have never done before. I bet you're so excited to find out what that is.
Them or us?
Oh, I didn't know who you were talking to.
Them.
Yes.
You look very
I'm
excited.
so excited.
I anticipate no one's listening. They're scrubbing through.
Aw, don't do that. You'll miss the fun.
Maybe this is all they listen to.
So last week, I alluded to this, that most of the time we get questions from just anonymous people. They choose, and it's fine. You choose not to give us your name, and we don't require that. We answer all questions. We are not partial to those.
I just want to say, I don't think you're an anonymous person. You just have submitted it
They might
anonymously.
be.
Oh, okay.
They might be
They-
anonymous.
Are we on an English lesson now?
I'm just saying, I just don't want them to
I don't know.
think.
I think they know what I meant. Nathan.
Maybe they did. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Well, back to my original point.
All you anonymous people who don't know who
Today's
you are.
episode, I am calling the Sydney episode.
Oh, Sydney.
We should have had confetti.
We
or
should
something.
have had cupcakes.
Sydney
Is an anonymous
our
person.
amazing listener, watcher, she always puts her name by her questions.
Used to be
well,
in
great.
Colorado, now in North Carolina.
That's
Yeah.
right. So she's getting hotter, as
Yeah,
she
as
comes.
she comes
down
she's
from
getting to the hot
Colorado,
weather
yeah.
down here.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
But Sydney has left us a lot. She just bombarded us with
She
questions.
didn't want us
Great.
to not have questions.
That's right. And
Very
so
kind of her.
she was so nice to let me know, this is me, and here's all my questions. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to answer all Sydney's questions in one episode.
We're going to do
Okay.
it. Here
We're
we
gonna-
go.
We're going to get right to every single one of
Lightning
your questions.
round.
Yes, we do want cupcakes.
Yes, we do. All day
Is
long.
that a question?
No, but it's the answer. That's the right answer. Here's Sydney's question, number one. And by the way, if you want an episode dedicated to you, you've got to start putting your name on the questions. Sydney wants to know, I heard y'all were running out of questions. So,
The answer to that was yes.
it was yes, it's not anymore.
Yeah.
You spurred on people's
That's right.
imaginations. So here we go. Has God already chosen everyone who will be saved? And if so, what's the point or necessity of sharing the gospel? Now, first, before we even touch on that question, I need to tell you, Sydney, we actually have answered that to a degree.
Sure.
So you need to go and check out podcast number 114.
Oh, wow.
Where we answer the question, what does God know?
Did you write that down, or did you just know
I wrote
that?
it down.
Oh, okay.
What does God know about the future?
Has them all in his head.
No, I don't. That's episode 114. And also, in episode 105, we talked about why should we pray if God knows everything. So we touch on all that, but we're going to answer your question. So, by the way, if you don't know how to find those episodes, there's a playlist on YouTube that you can go to called Full Podcasts on our YouTube channel, and you can just find every episode we've ever done.
I think also, if you go into our channel, there is a little search thing on the
There
side.
There
You
it
can
is.
just type in 105, and it'll pop it right up for you.
Hope so. So, but quickly, can we answer this question for Sydney? So if she doesn't want to watch.
And the question was, does God
114 and
know
105,
the particular number of people?
has God already chosen everyone who's going to be saved?
Now, if John Piper were here,
He would say one thing.
Why are we having a conversation on this podcast? What would be
Well,
different if John Piper was
because
here?
he's going to be here next week.
Oh,
No,
I was gonna say,
he is
do
not
we
gonna-
assume John Piper is watching it? If so, you are much smarter than any of us sitting here. But I don't. What is happening now?
And 3/4 of the audience is going, who?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, more
All
than
right.
that, probably.
But short answer to the way we would answer that question is no.
No, God
No.
does not. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
The I don't know what else to say.
No.
The overwhelming theme of the story of God and the story of people in the Bible points to us having free will. That's
Yes.
what we believe
Yes.
it points to. Now, there are many people in lots of different corners of the internet that will disagree with that. All three of us would not.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah. I will say, if you're interested in that question, predestination, which is what's popularly known as Calvinism, there's a lot out there on that, but there's also a lot out there that is on the other side of that issue. There's one guy that I think does a really good job, but you've got to really want to, you've got to be a geek and really want to get into this topic. His name is Leighton Flowers. He's a professor somewhere. I can't remember where he's at. He's a real smart dude. And he's got a channel on YouTube where he basically takes apart all of the Calvinist arguments and does a really good job of talking through how he believes they have misinterpreted lots of key verses in the Bible. His channel, which is funny, his channel on which you'll think is funny, most people won't care, on YouTube is Soteriology 101. It's a word that nobody ever uses. I haven't heard used since Bible college. But that's his channel, and I don't know why he chose to name it that, but it's probably because
he's a really smart guy.
He's a really smart guy, and he thinks everybody knows what
Once
that means.
you know a word, you feel like you have to use it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Soteriology is the study of salvation.
Yeah.
That's all it means. But that's his channel. If you want to know more about that, he answers a lot of those particular questions that people have about the Bible, specifically those passages that Calvinists will point to and say, see, that points to predestination, and God has destined everybody to heaven or hell before the foundation of the world. And he shows how that's a misinterpretation and clears a lot of that stuff up. So if you're interested in that, you can watch that or watch episode 114 or 105.
Yeah.
And we talk about it in a little bit more detail, but that's the quick answer. Got anything to add?
I don't have
Nope, I think that's
anything to
good.
add.
All right. So
And so then the obvious part, the next one of why would you share the gospel, I don't know if everybody, they have an answer,
They
which
do.
also doesn't make sense to me.
they do.
But-
And it makes sense to them. Again, they're still Christians. They're still brothers
yeah,
in Christ.
absolutely.
Brothers and sisters in Christ. That our Calvinist friends are not, outside the faith.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you can be wrong about a lot of things if you're
Including
right
us.
about Jesus.
Yes.
I have been wrong about almost everything.
Well, and the benefit is even I know we had that question, I guess it was a while ago, of what do we disagree on, but I think you can even hear in our conversations ways that we are reinterpreting in our conversations with one another in our minds, and what are we trying to figure it out. So I think the benefit of it is that some of these conversations have been going on for 500 years, 600 years, longer than that, 2,000 years about this. And it's just like a really long conversation between Christian brothers and sisters. Now, obviously, there have been horrific ways those arguments have been taken to be used against one another, even to the point of violence.
Right.
But, if you choose to look at it as, okay, we don't agree, because even the point you said of why would I share the gospel, the point is that they are sharing the gospel, which we think is important, and we may not agree on every point that they make about the gospel, but they are preaching Christ crucified, resurrected, and that he's bringing a new creation. All of those things that we would go, man, that is central to the faith. They may believe that not everyone who hears, but see, I even say that not everyone who hears it is going to turn to God. I also think that not everyone who hears the gospel is going to turn to God. So on those things, the back, kind of inside baseball conversations about whether the person had free will to choose it or whether God determined it, all of those things, I think, ultimately, even I think we would admit, well, we don't know one way for the other. We have the evidence we have, and I would point to it. But it's just inside Christianity talk at this point, and we're trying to figure it out.
And I think we have to be really careful not to condemn other people for those kind of things, because, I mean, I can just say I don't agree with it at all. It's not like I haven't looked at it and studied it and decided I don't think this is right. But it doesn't mean I think those are bad people, nor that I somehow think they're condemned. Now, to be clear, that's not true for everybody, but I think it's very difficult.
They might not say that about us.
Yeah, that's right. That to love people the way Jesus calls me to love them, and to condemn them for something that the Bible has not made absolutely 100% clear. And the interesting part to me is this particular question, it doesn't appear like from the epistles that anybody in the early church is arguing over this. That, or if they are, the writers of the letters to those churches are so disinterested in the argument that they don't address it. It may very well be they were having these same arguments even back then, but the writers of the scriptures were like, hey, y'all stop fighting. That's, I mean, if you get right down to it, the majority of the books are about y'all live in unity. Y'all get along with each other. Y'all love each other. That's really important for our witness. So that's what I would say about this is the impact has to be I have to move toward people, not away from them, because of something we might disagree on.
Good word. Question 2. We got to get moving. We got.
I'm sorry.
We got 4 questions from Sydney. If we're going to honor the Sydney episode,
We're going to have it.
All right. Sydney's second question is it possible to backslide or to lose your salvation? I will also say episode 80 and episode 75 deal with these questions in different degrees. Episode 80 is about how can Christians be sure that they have salvation, and episode 75 is about can you lose it. So anybody want to hit real quick on that question so that she doesn't have to listen to the whole podcast?
I think, the best example I can give is there's a guy, I think his name is Demas, that Paul basically calls out and says that he is no longer one of us, or he left us, or he turned away from us. It doesn't sound like he said he fooled us and he never was a part of us. He just decided he wanted no longer to be a part of us. And that's sort of the way Paul puts that. I think if it was possible for a companion of Paul's to walk away, I think it's possible for anybody to walk away.
I think it also goes back to last episode that we had last week, where we talk about at the very end who winds up in heaven, and we said it's people who get exactly what they want to get. So it seems possible to me that there could be a person who at one point says, I want God, I want heaven, and then decides, you know what, no, I don't. And God has, he says, I'll honor that if that's what you want. And I can say I know people who have said that very thing. They had but you can tell me that, well, they weren't truly, you don't know. They weren't truly saved. They didn't truly mean it. You don't know that. I guarantee you they thought they meant it. They thought they meant it when they believed and they said that, heaven is what they wanted and God is who they wanted to be with. And they also very well mean it today when they tell me, I don't want anything to do with God.
Yeah, that argument of they didn't really mean it or they weren't truly saved to me seems as judgmental as deciding, I'm deciding on the backside, they were never really true. And you're deciding that because you have a theology that says they can't walk away. Yeah. You've decided that they haven't. it's not evidence that they can't walk away. You just decided they can't and interpreted their behavior in light of that.
Yeah. And I will say, I do, again, this is another one of those inside questions that I know brothers and sisters in Christ who believe differently who would say, no, you're sealed with your salvation and you can't lose it. And they have verses to point to and evidence that they would say. I'm not sure that it has convinced me. But again, back we said in the very first question, I don't think that those people are
well, but I think even
for that belief.
Same thing we talked about with sharing the gospel. Yes. I think we come down on the same behavior, which is
Yes.
I've talked with people. They would quote parts of 1 John where he talks about those people left us, but they were never really one of us,
right.
and that's how they denied Christ. They claimed Christ, but then they left. They were never really one of us, which I'm not saying they're interpreting. I don't know. My point is, if we both agree that a person who came to church, called themselves a Christian, was baptized, did all that, if I think they meant it, but then they turned away from it, you think they did all the actions but didn't meet it, and are both of them, because that's what John and Paul would say, is treat those people like unbelievers who you are trying to draw back into the fold. If our behavior and compassion and love towards them is the same, who knows what's really going on the inside?
Not my job to determine
That's
that.
right.
And so, brothers and sisters on both sides of the arguments, if our behavior is the same, then I think we're ultimately in line.
We wind up back at the same place. That's a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, I like it. So, all right. So if you want more on that question, episode 80, episode 75, which was a long time ago. I think we were still recording, like in the lobby.
Probably.
Remember those days?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we recorded there
Probably.
before we had this wonderful log cabin.
Yeah.
We are now
That we go to.
situated in.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 3 from Miss Sydney. What's your opinion on prophecies today and people who claim to receive a word directly from God? I know some people who I believe are real Christians, but I am so skeptical of their claims that they hear the voice of God speaking extra biblical knowledge to them. Prophets.
I also am skeptical, Sydney. And
Yes, me
when
too.
people try to push it on me, and this is not kind, and I don't think I would say it these days. I said to a person years ago who was, really, I've got this word of the Lord for you. I'm a prophet. I said, man, I'm willing to accept you as a prophet as long as you're willing to accept the consequences of a prophet, which means if it turns out you're wrong, I get to stone you. If you're not willing to accept that, then you might not be a true prophet.
Yeah, I sort of come down in a similar area. My feeling on this is, I don't know, and I can't ever say, but I do know this: true prophets are right when they prophesy, and so no matter who you are or what you decide to say is a prophecy, neither one of us knows right away when you say it. We got to wait.
That's right.
That's my whole point in it. And I'm not saying that to be flippant. I really do mean it. If someone, if you see someone on television give a prophetic word and they say this is going to happen, or they look at you and you and I have had these kind of things where people say, I have a word for you that God said, and this is what's going to happen in your life. My reaction to both of those is the same. I said, well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I tell people all the time who ask me this question. I say, well, you know what? Just give it some time, wait and see, and then watch what happens when it doesn't come to pass and see how that person reacts. If they are humble enough to go, you know what? I was wrong. I repent of that. I'm sorry for being presumptuous. Or if they try to manipulate it, which I see a lot of guys, especially on TV, do this. They'll say, well, what I really meant was,
Right, that's right.
Or, that really wasn't exactly what I was talking about. That was something else. And they move the goalpost, so to speak. Yeah, I'm real skeptical of those folks. So I would say that to Sid. I would say, Sydney asked questions. I would say, Sydney, be very skeptical, have the wait and see attitude, and also remember when somebody speaks and they say it's the word of the Lord, he's not going to contradict himself. So be real careful if you hear something that doesn't line up with what you already know to be true in Scripture. That is something I think you can just immediately go ahead and say, well, I'm thinking that's wrong. Just healthy skepticism is your friend on that one.
Isn't there a place in Peter where Peter it says that every word of prophecy must be established by 2 or more? And I would just say to a person, particularly, I know that phrase, I have a word of the Lord for you, often isn't even about the future. It's about something happening in your life. And I would just, receive it. And if you think there might be something to it, share it with somebody. And if 2 or more confirm, oh, no, I think the Lord might be saying that to you. It might be something you listen to. But if it's just one person that says it, and I wouldn't put too much stock in it.
I think
and definitely, like Jason said, if it contradicts Scripture in any way, you got to let that go.
That's right.
I think it depends on what you mean by prophecy. I certainly think I am incredibly skeptical of any predictive prophetic word that, in 10 years this is going to happen, or in 2 weeks this is going to happen, whether it's into the world or just something's going to happen in this going on. I also have kind of global ones of, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. But I would say, I think that's the point of Christian community. The thing that Peter is referencing is that someone brings something. I feel God speaking this. The way their church services would work would be that way, that someone speaks it and then another person either confirms it and goes, oh man, when you said that does feel like God's speaking. Let's pray on that. Let's figure this out. I have had many a times people come to me and say, I've been praying and you keep coming to my mind. And is there something going on? Or, hey, I keep seeing this thing and God just keeps telling me I got to say something to you. I believe that's also prophetic, that God was speaking to them, revealing something that they not necessarily, they might have had glimmers of. And I think what often happens is, and maybe this is the problem, is some of us only go off gut instinct. So I assume that's not God. That's I have made this assumption and I have done this, and either good or bad, you act off that gut instinct. And I'm going to tell you what I think, whether it's God or not, or I think that's my gut, so I'm not going to say anything. When we get very tuned in, one as an individual to being able to hear what God might actually be saying to us, but also, as you've already said, I do that in community, and it isn't me as the prophet bringing a word that you have to accept whether it's true or not. You just have to accept it. That's a problem. If I'm in a community context where I'm in a small group and someone says, hey, I keep hearing this, and you keep saying this thing, God keeps saying to me that I need to say to you X, Y, and Z, and then the community gets to hear it, and it doesn't have to be 12 people. I mean, 1 or 2 people, as you've said, and someone else goes, well, that contradicts Scripture, then we all go, oh, nope, that wasn't God. Or, yes, I've also heard that. We need to talk. Because otherwise, what the other side of that is anyone who comes to me and says, hey, I feel God saying this, because it didn't personally come to me, I can discount it. I think that's the benefit of community. And unfortunately, in Christian community, sometimes we elevate individual people to this status of prophet. Or even just by being a pastor, people go, wow, well, he must have heard something I didn't hear. And I think both of those things held in tension is the way to do it, of being skeptical but accepting it in community.
Yeah, you and I, Nathan, just had in the last day or so an example of this, and that we just had a thing in our service recently where a part of it was us spending a little bit of time listening to the Spirit for conviction. And during that time, I had a very strong conviction about something I wasn't thinking of before that time. I was actually doing the message, but I wasn't doing, Jason was leading that reflection time. And on Monday, I decided to say it to another of our people on staff, Steve, I had this thought about such and such, and I just need to run it by you to see what you think. Turns out, Steve had a very similar thought about the same thing, and later yesterday, we were talking, and Nathan had the same thing, which we then all confirmed, okay, that probably means we need to do something.
Yeah, that's most likely. And we already know, just because we know Scripture, nothing in that we felt contradicted Scripture,
Right.
and very much was supported by Scripture.
No, but the good illustration is I am a gut level person. As you know, an 8 on the Enneagram, that's the way I operate. But I've come to doubt myself enough to know, my natural inclination would be, that's off. I'm just going to go do it. That I've come to the place of going, I'm going to ask somebody. I'm going to test that against somebody who's different from me, who sees things a little different. And Steve, office right next to mine. And then later we had that. So that's an example. I think it's wise to doubt them. But in community, you should probably listen if 2 or more tell you.
Well, and that's what Paul then says a couple places of, testing the spirits. And what he means is when you receive a revelation or you feel God is speaking to you, every time it should be tested. And that's the benefit I think you get to have in this, where you don't have to feel like you're being judgmental of, I'm judging you because you just brought this to me. You can just go, everything anyone tells me, I'm going to test it. And I'm going to test, does this match up with Scripture? Do other people confirm this? And now I get to just live in the freedom of, I can believe the best. Hey, you brought that to me with good intentions. Let me take that. But I'm also just not going to accept it just because another person said it. There's a tension to be held.
That's right. And, Ed talked about, I've had people do that for me. They'll come up after a service or something and say, I feel God spoke to me and all. I never go, well, I'm going to be skeptical about that.
Right.
I always receive it. I always am thankful. But I know what I'm going to do after that is like you guys just said. I'm going to test that out. I'm going to run that by some other people. And I'm politely going to receive that from somebody. I'm not going to condemn them from that. Because if it really is God leading them to speak that, I certainly don't want to do anything to harm that or to discourage them in that gift, because it truly is a gift.
Yes, that's right.
That God's given. So, I know I was a little flippant in the way that I, because I watch, I've seen people on television and I hear that on the internet. There's been a lot of stupid prophecies out there,
And most of the time they're about predicting the future about some current world event.
About politics or something like that.
I think it's very wise to be skeptical of all of that.
Well, and I think your answer is the correct answer, which is wait.
I'll just wait.
Because when someone tells you the world's going to end in 2 weeks, no matter what you do, you go, thanks for telling. It's like the guy who comes and tells you, hey, this is what the whales are saying. You're like, well, great. I don't know how to test that or to know. I guess when the whales tell me. And I think it's the same thing. Someone tells you the world's going to end in 2 weeks. You go, I'll wait in 2 weeks and then I'll know.
Yeah, I just hung out with a person that they started telling me, well, here's what I've decided, that this is what Revelation means, and this is the person, they were bringing in Putin and Trump and Biden.
Putin is in Revelation?
Oh, yeah. They were telling them where they fit into the whole story. And I listened politely to the whole thing, and I said, well, all right. I said, I guess we'll see. And we will.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, that's right.
We will.
And that's the way you test it.
That's right.
You test it. I think it's just important you just test it.
But I was honest with this person. I said, they said the same thing about some of the people that were in politics in the 80s.
That's right.
So I would just hold that interpretation.
Turns out you tested that, and that was not true.
It didn't work out so good for that prophet. Right. So anyway, all right, last question for Miss Sydney. And this was kind of fun. Have y'all ever encountered a person who was possessed by a demon? Have you ever?
I believe I have.
I knew you said you had.
I believe I have, but I don't have a way to know that. But it's the freakiest thing I've ever had. It was a long time ago, and I was young, and scared to crap.
You want to tell us any details?
Well, no.
That's okay.
The details I'll tell you. Somebody came in an office. I was at a church, not this church. Church I worked at before this. Church office was in the basement. I'm the only staff member. All of a sudden, there's a person in my office, and different-looking young man. I was young at the time, and they're young, and obviously in distress, and begins to tell me this story about things that he's been doing, and that he thinks he's been possessed by a demon, and lots of weird things began. There were just lots of really weird things that were happening that I trusted him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think
that's all you got to say on that one.
I don't have any other way to interpret it, and thankfully I didn't have to do much else with it. But I did read some books afterwards that confirmed that those kind of things have happened to other people in other places around the planet where demon possession seems to be more normal.
I was going to say, I have not personally had you asked if I personally know. I have not had that I can say for sure. But I know there are people that I know personally around who do ministry around the globe, and they tell me they have. And they are people that I trust. They are not sensationalists.
That's right.
And I have heard their stories, and I do not doubt them one bit.
Well, and I think, at least for most of us, coming across demonic possession is probably not as frequent or common, but I certainly have been with people and felt that when I'm with them or in their life, that there's a level of what people often recall of spiritual oppression, that they are in a place that what is affecting their life, the level of, we used the word sorrow before, the level of sorrow, the level of even sometimes self-harm that are coming upon themselves, is not just a psychological problem, that there is more to it. Yeah. I know certainly when Jennifer and I have done foster things before, being with young children who are not just having thoughts about themselves, but having emotions that at their age, it is clear that is coming from somewhere else. And I think what unfortunately happens sometimes in the West, and very kind of things that have been shaped by rationalism and enlightenment, we first want to go to some kind of rational explanation for things. But as believers, the way that Jesus says that you drive out the demon is through prayer and fasting. And I don't think whenever I'm with a person, because what we know demons want to do is they want to cause harm to people. I certainly, as Jason said, have never had even an experience like that. And I know of pastors that regularly will tell me, I know even here in Georgia of a pastor who told me that because over in Haralson County, there is some activity of witches.
Which is where I was. I was at a church in Haralson County.
And I was actually visiting a church over there, and they were speaking on this. And one of the guys said, I've had several encounters that were similar to what you talked about. But I certainly think sometimes in our day-to-day interactions, even maybe sometimes with ourselves, we think the only solution is something psychological or physical. And sometimes I believe that because of trauma people go through, because of wounds in our life, it opens this door for Satan to speak other lies to us. And so I have never experienced that, but I certainly think I have experienced people who what is afflicting them is beyond just a physical, psychological, emotional problem. And I think, so when I heard this question, I certainly think of all, the answer to the question is no for me, but I think sometimes as Western Christians, we are sometimes quick to dismiss, it couldn't be a demonic thing, it couldn't be Satan at work. And I certainly don't want to just see Satan in everything.
That's right.
So I don't want to go to that extent.
There's two extremes.
But to see in everything God is at work in things, but we do believe there's a spiritual enemy who is also at work in things. And sometimes when we experience things, the best thing we can do is pray about it and just pray for that person or ourselves.
I think we are certainly at a place in our country where we don't see Satan in enough things. And since his goal is to oppose God and to oppose the body of Christ, we don't see enough of the things that are destroying the work of God in people in the church as his work. Now, whether it's possession, I'm not saying possession, or even oppression, but he is actively at work in our country and our world, and
is being mistaken for the opposite.
Yes, in many cases.
And that's biblical. He comes as an angel of light. That simply means that there is going to be things that you see as of God that has been twisted, and it is actually the opposite.
Well, and sometimes what he's trying to do, because I thought this too, is he's trying to divide us, and often the work he is doing is in the division of people, because sometimes we mistake the work of Satan for the work of people. And so what we look at is we go, well, if the people on the other political side of me, or this ethnic group of people, or these people who don't come from my country, or just people who disagree with me, it's them who's causing all the problems. And that we look at what's going on in our world and we go, if we could just get the right political solution, we could just get the right, medical solution or whatever, we could get the right solution of this world. And sometimes it is a spiritual problem. It's not to say that we don't work on the problems in this world. It's to say that one of the ways, and you mentioned this at this point, it's been weeks that this came out, but in your mention, the first step for believers is dependence on God. And so the first step is always the spiritual side. Doesn't mean that we don't make real world physical changes in the physical reality we live in. But the first step is to say, let me approach this from a spiritual angle.
It's why I wish everybody really understood and would practice at least part of the 12 steps. The first step is the step of there's a problem. I can't handle this.
I'm powerless.
I am powerless against this, and God must act on my part. We almost always say, there's a problem. I don't have what it takes, but I bet that doctor does. I bet that psychologist does. I bet the school does. I bet they do.
I was going to say, just a little personal note here. You just reminded me of this. I saw a counselor once, and I was under what I would call a deep oppression, a spiritual darkness over me, and it was the reason that drove me to my counselor. And it just hit me. That was the first place he went with me. He said, you got an enemy. He is after you right now, and you are battling a spiritual battle. And up until that point, I was thinking much more physical, much more emotional than that. I was thinking much more other worldly type things. And he immediately cut right to the spiritual. And that was a key for me. When I started seeing this as a truly spiritual battle, it helped turn the tide on where I was at. So
it's why I think the enemy most often attacks us at that step. If he can keep us from ever saying, God help me.
Yeah.
And really meaning it.
Yep.
He will.
Yep.
He'll go, well, go to a doctor. Oh, yeah, go to a counselor. Yeah, read that book. Go to that conference. Do that thing. Talk to somebody. But if he can keep you from saying, God help me, and really mean it.
All right.
That one was not as fun of an answer. We got really deep on that one.
We got deep on that. Good for us. I will say before we wrap up on that question, we did an entire episode on this, episode 89.
Really?
Yeah. I was as shocked as you are. When I went through our list, we got a whole episode about
I will choose not to
casting
be
out
shocked.
demons.
I knew that.
But anyway, I don't remember us talking about this. But hey, we're at 126, so I'm not going to remember them all. But if you want to know more about that, you can check out episode 89.
If you didn't remember it, how did you find it? You just typed the word demons?
No, I actually scrolled through all 126
look
episodes.
at the work this man puts into this podcast.
I did, and I was looking for anything about this, and I said, look at there.
I don't think we say this enough. We appreciate your work on this.
Jason just getting the resources. He's doing it. He's killing it.
Well, I appreciate the thanks.
I hope you guys appreciate it. You're selfish. You don't even think about the blood, sweat, and tears this man.
Sydney, send Jason a cupcake.
Yeah, send Jason some cupcakes.
And
the rest of
another one so he can share it with me.
Yeah, we need cupcakes. But yeah.
So, Sydney, we hope that you were honored by the episode that we just dedicated to you. It will always be yours, 126. So, we hope it was good. And for you guys who are sending in questions, let us know who you are. You don't have to. We still answer your questions. We love you either way. But
we would like to treat you just this way.
Yes.
So if you felt...
So when you put your name, also tell us what you could give us. Like a cupcake.
That's what I mean.
That's what matters. What we get out of it.
We see our relationship with you guys as primarily usury. So if there's something you could do for us... Jason had to look up the names of podcast episodes. Do you know how long that took? Probably 4.5 minutes.
I'll say 4 minutes max.
So if there's something you could do with 4.5 minutes of labor...
Here's what I will guarantee you. I can eat a cupcake before he can look it up.
Well, yeah.
That would be a fun game.
That'd be a big cupcake if you couldn't. All right. So there you have it. That's episode 126. Next week we'll come back. We have one big, long question. It's going to take the whole episode. Is this a big one?
All right.
We have not. There is no episode for this.
Oh.
We have never dealt with this question before. So you better come back and see what that is. See you next week. Bye, Sydney.
Bye, Sydney.